Wait, you actually showed up. One of his co-workers bursts out laughing as the others slap the table, unable to hold back their amusement. Their voices hit him like cold water. The single dad freezes, half-seated, half-standing, realizing in one painful second that the blind date they arranged wasn't real. It was a setup, a joke. And the girl sitting across from him, the quiet young woman with calm eyes, looks up in confusion, noticing the shift but not understanding the words. She taps the table gently, trying to read the room through their expressions. He sees the uncertainty forming on her face, the way she tilts her head, trying to catch a meaning she cannot hear. His stomach twists. Instead of reacting to the mockery, he forces a steady breath and sits down fully. "It's good to meet you," he signs awkwardly, hoping she doesn't sense the cruelty behind him. And just like that, he chooses dignity, hers and his own. Most mornings in his world began the same way. Quiet, careful, and a little tired. He woke before the sun, not because he wanted to, but because he had to. His daughter Lily always slept curled against the edge of her blanket, small and peaceful, unaware of how many pieces her father held together just to make sure she could feel safe. He would kiss her forehead, whisper that he loved her, then rush to pack her lunch and iron the same work shirt he had ironed far too many times. His job didn't pay much, but it was steady. He stocked shelves, lifted boxes, and smiled at customers who rarely remembered his name. By lunch, his back usually ached, but he never complained. He saved complaints for people who had choices. He had a little girl who depended on him, and her happiness was worth more than any comfort he had lost along the way. He lived on a budget tighter than a fist. Rent, food, school supplies. Every month felt like a quiet battle he never stopped fighting. Still, he tried to give Lily moments of joy. Dollar store toys, library trips, pancakes on Sundays. She never asked for more. She only ever asked, "Daddy, are you okay?" And he always answered yes, even on days when he wanted to say no. What he carried inside never reached his voice. Years ago, the woman he loved walked out without warning, leaving him with a newborn and a heart scared of letting anyone close again. He learned to build walls made of routines, responsibilities, and excuses, not because he didn't want love, but because he didn't know if he could survive another goodbye. So he avoided dating, avoided promises, avoided anything that might hurt Lily or remind him of what it felt like to not be enough for someone. Yet even with that wound, he stayed gentle. Kindness was the only thing he never lost, even when everything else had been taken. And today, after that humiliating prank, he felt something shift, an old fear rising again, reminding him how fragile dignity can feel when the world decides to laugh. It happened months before the prank, on a night the whole town remembered. A storm had blown in fast, loud and angry. Rain hit the roads in sheets, turning everything dark and confusing. He had been driving home late after picking up an extra shift, praying his old truck would make it through the water building on the streets. All he wanted was to get back to Lily before she woke up from another nightmare. But then he saw a small figure on the sidewalk. A woman stood alone, soaked, holding her hands close to her chest. At first he thought she was on the phone. Then he noticed she wasn't reacting to the thunder at all. She wasn't flinching. She wasn't turning toward anything she should have heard. She was deaf, and she was terrified. He slowed the truck and rolled down the window. "Are you okay?" he asked. She didn't respond. Her eyes darted toward him, wide and unsure, ready to run if she needed to. He lifted his hands, palms out, trying to show he meant no harm. Then he pointed gently at her phone, now dim from rain. She shook her head and lifted a dead battery. He stepped out of the truck, rain hitting him hard, but he kept his movements slow. He pointed toward his truck, then made a simple, clear gesture, "Shelter." She didn't move at first. She was shaking. He realized she couldn't understand his words, but she could understand fear. So he took off his jacket and held it out. Not forcing, offering. After a long second she reached for it. Her fingers brushed his hand, cold, trembling. That was enough for her to trust him just a little. He guided her inside the truck and turned up the heater. She looked at him, half grateful, half scared, trying to read his lips. He spoke slowly. "It's okay," he said. "You're safe." He drove her to the nearest well-lit cafe that stayed open during storms. She relaxed only when she saw other people. He bought her tea, gave her space, and stayed nearby so she wouldn't be alone until help came. But help didn't come the way he expected. Two of her friends rushed in, panic on their faces. When they saw him sitting near her, wet and tired, their fear turned into suspicion. They looked at him as if he had done something wrong. He tried to explain, But he didn't know sign language and they didn't give him a chance. One friend stepped between them. "We'll take it from here," she said sharply. He backed away. He didn't fight. He didn't defend himself. He just nodded and left, letting the misunderstanding stain the moment. Driving home that night, he told himself it didn't matter. He had done the right thing. But the weight never left him, and it followed him into the blind date they turned into a joke. It happened months before the prank, on a night the whole town remembered. A storm had blown in fast, loud and angry. Rain hit the roads in sheets, turning everything dark and confusing. He had been driving home late after picking up an extra shift, praying his old truck would make it through the water building on the streets. All he wanted was to get back to Lily before she woke up from another nightmare. But then he saw a small figure on the sidewalk. A woman stood alone, soaked, holding her hands close to her chest. At first he thought she was on the phone. Then he noticed she wasn't reacting to the thunder at all. She wasn't flinching. She wasn't turning toward anything she should have heard. She was deaf, and she was terrified. He slowed the truck and rolled down the window. "Are you okay?" he asked. She didn't respond. Her eyes darted toward him, wide and unsure, ready to run if she needed to. He lifted his hands, palms out, trying to show he meant no harm. Then he pointed gently at her phone, now dim from rain. She shook her head and lifted it, dead battery. He stepped out of the truck, rain hitting him hard, but he kept his movements slow. He pointed toward his truck, then made a simple, clear gesture. "Shelter." She didn't move at first. She was shaking. He realized she couldn't understand his words, but she could understand fear. So he took off his jacket and held it out. Not forcing, offering. After a long second, she reached for it. Her fingers brushed his hand. Cold. Trembling. That was enough for her to trust him just a little. He guided her inside the truck and turned up the heater. She looked at him, half grateful, half scared, trying to read his lips. He spoke slowly. "It's okay," he said. "You're safe." He drove her to the nearest well-lit cafe that stayed open during storms. She relaxed only when she saw other people. He bought her tea, gave her space, and stayed nearby so she wouldn't be alone until help came. But help didn't come the way he expected. Two of her friends rushed in, panic on their faces, when they saw him sitting near her, wet and tired. Their fear turned into suspicion. They looked at him as if he had done something wrong. He tried to explain, but he didn't know sign language, and they didn't give him a chance. One friend stepped between them. "We'll take it from here," she said sharply. He backed away. He didn't fight. He didn't defend himself. He just nodded and left, letting the misunderstanding stain the moment. Driving home that night, he told himself it didn't matter. He had done the right thing. But the weight never left him. And it followed him into the blind date they turned into a joke. The next morning, he hoped the air would feel lighter. He hoped the shame from last night would fade if he buried himself in work. But trouble met him before he even stepped inside the store. Two women waited near the entrance. Her friends. The same ones from the stormy night. Their faces were tight, eyes sharp with judgment. One of them stepped forward. "We need to talk," she said, arms folded. He kept his voice steady. "About what?" "About last night. About you pretending to be some nice guy. You think we don't see what you're doing?" He blinked, confused. "I didn't do anything to her." "That's the problem," the other woman snapped. "You make yourself look innocent. You made her feel comfortable. You make everyone think you're gentle, but we know better." His jaw tightened, but he didn't raise his voice. "I've never hurt her. Not then. Not now." They didn't believe him. They weren't even listening. Their fear for her mixed with their memory of seeing him beside her that stormy night, soaked and exhausted, made them assume the worst again. Inside the store, his coworkers watched from the windows. When he finally walked in, they burst out laughing. "Dude, you actually sat through the whole date? You didn't even get mad? You're too soft. Man, grow a spine." He didn't answer. He didn't need to. Their words slid off him, but not without leaving marks. Across the room, the deaf girl stood near the bakery aisle, looking between the groups. Her eyes moved fast, trying to catch meanings she couldn't hear. She sensed anger, confusion, and hurt, but none of it made sense to her. She lifted her hands as if to ask something, but her friends gently pulled her away. And he realized, standing there with all those eyes on him, that he didn't belong in her world. Not her wealth, not her circle, not her silence. He stepped back from all of it, heart heavy, choosing distance because getting closer only seemed to make everything worse. He tried to keep his head down for the rest of the day, but whispers followed him like shadows. People talked when they thought he wasn't listening. They always did, but now their voices carried a new tone. Fear mixed with curiosity. By afternoon he finally understood why. One of the cashiers leaned in and whispered, "You know who that girl is, right?" He shook his head. "She's from the Hargrove family." The name hit him like a cold wind. He knew it even though he wasn't part of that world. The Hargroves owned half the buildings downtown. They donated to schools, hospitals, charities. Their events filled the social pages. They had influence that reached places he would never step. He felt a slow sinking inside. She wasn't just a stranger he helped during a storm. She wasn't just a girl caught in a cruel prank. She was someone whose life lived on a different level entirely. Her family had lawyers, connections, and eyes everywhere. If they thought he had hurt her, if they even suspected he had bad intentions, it wouldn't just be gossip. It would be consequences. His job depended on reputation. One complaint, one misunderstanding, and his manager would let him go without blinking. Jobs like his were easy to replace. Dads like him were not. He imagined Lily's face if he came home without work. He imagined the overdue bills, the tight meals, the fear of not being enough again. He stood in the break room, hands pressed against the counter, trying to breathe through the weight sitting on his chest. Defend himself and risk looking defensive. Stay silent and risk looking guilty. Every choice felt dangerous. And the worst part, he knew she had no idea how powerful her world was, or how small it made his feel. He was restocking cans on the top shelf, when the store suddenly went quiet. Not peaceful quiet, tense quiet, the kind that makes your chest tighten before you even know why. He turned and froze. She was standing at the entrance. The deaf girl, hair still soft around her face, hands held close to her chest, eyes searching only for him. Beside her stood a man in a black jacket, watching the room with calm authority, an interpreter. His coworkers straightened, trying to look busy. A few whispered, "Oh no, she actually came." She walked toward him, steady but nervous, and the interpreter followed. People stepped aside. No one laughed now. When she reached him, she signed something quickly, her expressions sharp with emotion. The interpreter spoke gently. "She says, she needs to understand, she wants the truth." He swallowed. "About what?" The interpreter watched her hands. "About why you left that night, and why everyone is saying things that don't make sense." He glanced at his coworkers, who had gone pale, then at her friends near the back, already frowning like they wanted to pull her away. He shook his head. "You don't need to be here. People are already—" She signed again, stronger this time. The interpreter translated. "She says she decides where she belongs, not them." A few customers turned to look. His heartbeat stumbled. She didn't care about the eyes on her. She only cared about clarity. He exhaled slowly. "That night, I only wanted to help. You looked scared. The storm was bad. I stayed until you were safe. Your friends misunderstood. I didn't want things to get worse, so I left." Her face softened. Her shoulders dropped as if she had been carrying something heavy for months. She signed something small, almost like a whisper. The interpreter's voice lowered. "She says she remembers your jacket, and she remembers you not touching her until she reached for help first." His ears warmed. He didn't expect her to remember that detail. She stepped a bit closer and signed again. "She says she felt safe with you, even if she didn't understand everything." The air shifted. His coworkers stopped pretending to work. Her friends exchanged uncertain looks. For the first time since that storm, their eyes met without fear, pride, or misunderstanding between them. Something quiet and real passed through that moment. A beginning neither of them had been brave enough to imagine before. After that day in the store, something shifted between them. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't loud. It was quiet, like two people realizing they didn't have to stand on opposite sides anymore. They started small. She would stop by after work with her notebook, writing simple questions. "Are you okay? Did the storm scare you too? Do you still have that old jacket?" He answered with short notes in return. It felt strange at first, but also peaceful. He didn't have to impress her. He didn't have to talk fast or explain every feeling. She took her time reading him, and he took his time choosing the right words so she could understand them. Soon they moved from notes to texting. She taught him a few basic signs. "Thank you, sorry, coffee, friend." He practiced them with a quiet kind of seriousness that made her smile. One Saturday she met his daughter Lily. That changed everything. Lily ran up to her, without hesitating, holding a stuffed bear and saying, "Hi, Daddy said you don't hear, so I can show you things instead." Instead of talking, Lily drew little pictures on a napkin, a house, a sun, a big heart. The girl understood every drawing. She laughed softly, and Lily lit up like someone had given her the whole world. Later he said, "She likes you." She signed back, "I like her too." Their rhythm grew naturally after that. They shared simple dinners, soup she made, pasta he tried not to burn. She helped him fill out job forms he didn't know how to word. He fixed the loose handle on her front gate without being asked. She taught Lily how to sign goodnight. He made her laugh with stories about all the odd customers he met at work. She began to relax around him, around Lily, around the small home where no one expected her to be perfect or quiet or proper. And he found himself looking forward to her messages, her gentle smile, the way she touched his arm lightly when she wanted his attention, not demanding, just present. There was no confession, no sudden spark, just warmth, steady and honest. Something real was growing in the space they built together, something neither of them had felt safe enough to hope for in a long time. The fall happened fast, faster than anything they had built together. One evening he sent her a message asking if she and Lily wanted to stop by for dinner. He waited for her usual soft reply, but nothing came. Minutes turned into hours. He tried again. Still nothing. He went to sleep with a strange weight in his chest, unsure why the silence felt so sharp. The next morning she didn't come by the store. She didn't text. She didn't even open his messages. By afternoon, he finally learned why. Her friend, one of the same women who never trusted him, stood outside the store smirking at him. She held her phone up just enough for him to see. A message thread. His number. Horrible words. Words he would never say. Words attacking her silence, her disability. Cruel jokes about her not hearing. Mocking remarks that cut deeper than anything she'd ever told him. His heart dropped into his stomach. "I didn't write that," he said, voice shaking. Her friend shrugged. "She believes what she saw." Meanwhile, the deaf girl sat alone in her room, holding her phone with trembling hands. She read the messages again and again, each one colder than the last. She didn't need sound to feel the cruelty. It hit her deepest wound, the fear that people only pretended to care until her silence became inconvenient. Tears slipped down her cheeks as she typed one message back to him. A message he never received. "Please don't contact me again." The next time she saw him at a distance, she looked away quickly, eyes dim with hurt. He tried to approach once, but she stepped back as if burned. He left her alone after that, confused and heartbroken. She hid behind her walls again, convinced she had misread him. Both of them sank into quiet pain, believing for the first time that the other had never truly cared. The truth didn't explode into the open. It slipped out quietly, almost by accident. A week after everything fell apart, the jealous friend was arguing with someone outside the cafe near his workplace. Her voice rose in frustration. "I only sent those texts because she was getting too close to him. She doesn't understand how people like him think. He would have hurt her eventually." Someone recorded it. Someone who knew the deaf girl. Someone who sent the video straight to her. She watched the clip 3 times, hands shaking as the words sank in. Her friend wasn't protecting her. She was punishing her for choosing someone outside their world. Someone from a different class. Someone she didn't top. The girl covered her mouth, trying to steady her breathing. She had cut off the one person who never judged her. She had believed the worst so quickly, because she had been hurt before. Past moments flashed through her mind. Times people spoke slowly to her like she was a child. Times someone laughed because she missed a joke. Times she trusted someone who later said they only tolerated her disability. The fake messages felt real because old wounds had taught her to expect cruelty. Heart pounding, she rushed to find him. He was in the parking lot, loading boxes into a truck. When he saw her, he froze, guarded, unsure. She signed quickly, hands trembling. He couldn't understand everything, but the urgency in hers told him this time was different. The interpreter arrived minutes later. She signed again, tears forming. "She says she's sorry," the interpreter said softly. "She didn't know. She saw the video. She knows you never sent those messages." His shoulders dropped. The breath he'd been holding for days finally left him. Then she signed again, slower, more fragile. "She says she trusted you, and losing that hurt more than she expected." He looked at her, realizing how deep her pain ran, how many invisible scars she carried. "I never wanted to be someone who hurt you," he whispered. For the first time in weeks they stepped toward each other instead of away, ready to protect something they almost lost. Her family's charity event was the kind of gathering he never imagined attending. The hall was filled with people who carried confidence like an expensive accessory: politicians, business owners, donors, and reporters who recognized the Hargrove name instantly. He stood near the entrance, feeling painfully out of place in his best shirt, which still looked too simple for the room. He had come only because she asked him to. She had squeezed his hand and signed, "Please, I want you there," and he couldn't say no. When her family saw him, a ripple of silence followed. Some recognized him from the storm incident. Others remembered the blind date prank that had spread through their social circle. A few whispered about the single dad who didn't belong. But then she walked in beside him. Her posture was straight, her chin lifted, her hand lightly hooked around his arm. For someone who once avoided crowds, she looked braver than he had ever seen her. The interpreter followed close behind, ready to. The event began with speeches and applause, but tension built when her father stepped up to the microphone. "We've heard many rumors these past weeks," he began. "Tonight we want clarity." He gestured toward her. She signed a request and he stepped aside, allowing her the moment. She walked to the front, her hands trembling only slightly. The interpreter stood beside her. She signed slowly, the interpreter speaking for the crowd. "There was a man who helped me during a storm. He expected nothing. He protected me. He left when others misunderstood. And he was hurt again when someone tried to break our connection with lies." People shifted in surprise. Her eyes found him, and she signed again. "This man never mocked me, never judged me. He only showed kindness." Then she nodded toward him, inviting him forward. He swallowed hard and stepped up. His voice was steady but humble. "I don't belong in rooms like this," he said. "But I care about her. That's all I have to offer. I don't have wealth or power. I just try to do the right thing." She translated his words herself this time, her fingers gentle and proud. He continued, "I made mistakes. I walked away too fast. But I never stopped wanting her to be safe." You could feel the shift. Walls softening, judgments melting, people seeing the truth laid bare. Her father watched his daughter closely. The way she smiled, the way she stood taller, the way her eyes softened when she looked at the man beside her. For the first time her family seemed to see her differently. Not as a fragile girl needing protection, but as a woman choosing someone who made her feel understood. When she reached for his hand in front of everyone, he hesitated for only a second before taking it. The room didn't gasp. The room didn't mock. It applauded, quietly at first, then stronger. A warm rising wave of acceptance he never expected. That moment became their beginning. Public, honest, and finally free of fear. The days after the charity event felt different, lighter, safer, almost like their lives had quietly clicked into place. There were no big declarations, no dramatic promises, just steady choices, small moments that built something warm between them. She visited their home more often now, not with hesitation but with ease. Lily would run to her first, wrapping small arms around her waist. The girl always knelt down and hugged her back, smiling at the tea hands signing, "I missed you." Lily became the bridge that held all three of them together, filling every silence with innocence and joy. They began sharing routines, morning texts, evening dinners, simple walks where he carried Lily on his shoulders and she walked beside them, her fingers brushing his every now and then. He found himself opening up in ways that scared him. He told her about his fears of losing his job, of failing Lily, of not being enough. She listened with her eyes, not just her ears. She touched his hand gently, signing, "You are more than enough." She also began trusting herself more. She realized she wasn't just someone who needed protecting. With him she felt seen in a way her powerful world had never allowed. Not for her family's wealth, not for her disability, but for her kindness, her strength, her quiet bravery. Their two worlds didn't collide anymore. They blended softly, naturally, like they were always meant to meet in the middle. And for the first time in years he let hope sit beside him without fear. Sunday mornings slowly became their ritual. The three of them sat together at the small kitchen table, Lily drawing little hearts on sticky notes, the girl slicing fruit with calm focus, and him pouring hot chocolate into mismatched mugs. It wasn't fancy. It wasn't planned, but it felt like a family. Lily signed family with her tiny hands, and the girl smiled, repeating the sign back to her. He watched them both, feeling a peace he hadn't known in years. Their communication had become effortless, notes, hands, laughs, touches on the shoulder. Words were no longer the only language they shared. Before breakfast, Lily always made him close his eyes. Then she placed both their hands together over hers, whispering, We're together. That's what matters. He opened his eyes and saw the truth in front of him. A home built from kindness, trust, and a love that grew quietly but surely. Tell us where you're watching from, and one moment that hit you the hardest.